A very pleasant good afternoon and welcome to the afternoon rush. It is a rush for today, Monday, the 26th of April 2021. We want to thank you very much for joining us here on the rush this afternoon as we will continue to unpack what played out today at the High Court. Of course, the election petition is the big talk. Of course, we'll deal with that. We'll also deal with a number of other topical issues in the news. My name is Randolph Critchlow, and welcome to those persons joining us internationally in the region and right here in Guyana. Thank you very much for being a part of what we're doing here. We'll get to what we want to talk about. That is a petition. Of course, in the news today, that hearing coming down, not on the side of the APNU AFC, but we're going to unpack a number of issues. As we normally do, good afternoon, and let us know where you're joining us from. Good afternoon, one and all. Let us know where you're joining us from. We're seeing a lot of comments in the comment section right now. Let us know where you're joining us from. As we wait to start the program, let me share the live stream. We ask you that you do the same thing to share the live stream. And as I share the live stream, we'll be right back in a matter of 30 seconds. Do not go anywhere. We have lots of news to unpack. So just stick with us as we try to share the live stream. Actually, we'll not go on that break. We'll try and share the live stream right here without moving and going away from you. So many things to unpack. But before we get to that, we, as usual, like to ask where you're joining us from this afternoon. Where are you listening? Where were you listening to the petition hearing this morning from? Let us know. Barbados in the house. Thank you very much. Berbice in the house. New York City in the house. Thank you very much for joining. Locked in from Brooklyn, New York. Lots of friends over there in Holland. Thank you very much. Brooklyn is in the house, of course. Again, many persons over there. Robert King says he's joining us from Egypt. Very interested. All over the world, if that is so. Robert, thank you very much. South Carolina in the house. London is in the house. Thank you very much for being a part of the broadcast. Remember, let's share the live stream. Let us share the live stream so our friends and family will know what is happening. Let us share the live stream. As I'm trying to share right now to a few more places before we get started this afternoon, guys, it is going to be a very interesting discussion this afternoon as we consider what played out in the High Court. So let me get to that before we get doing anything else. Let me just share some other groups and some other pages. Of course, we are live on Facebook. We are live on YouTube. If you prefer to look at us there on YouTube, go right ahead, log in. APNU AFC on YouTube for that, so you can see what we're doing there. Continue to let us know where you're joining us from. Before this is our usual intro. We want to know where you are viewing the program from. Maryland is in the house. Crane on the west side is in the house. Antigua, our friends in Antigua, thank you very much. Montreal, Canada is in the house. Joining from Providence, East Bank Demerara, New Jersey. Thank you. I'll get to some more just now just after I share the live stream. Folks, so many things to talk about this afternoon. And just a bit of programming note, we're also going to be joining Sherrod Duncan this evening. We're also going to be joining Sherrod this evening as we unpack what played out in the courts today, folks. I know persons are disappointed, but as we said, as the leader of the opposition also expressed, and will bring to you his statement coming out of this afternoon's hearing. Of course, it started at 11, went all the way to about 12:30, and we listened to the ruling. And we are going to be unpacking a number of the issues now. Let me just share at a few more places so that we can have everybody on board with the credible and valid information this afternoon. Right. Folks, we see many of you logging on. And we're happy that you're logged on and you're locked in. Connecticut is in the house. Maryland is in the house. Annandale is in the house, Buxton in the house, New Jersey, Springland's in the house. Right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being a part of the afternoon rush. Let us get right to it, folks. It has been 420 days since the March 2nd regional and general election. And after today, After today's ruling, we still do not have credible results from those elections. We still do not have credible results from those elections. After today's ruling, we still do not have credible results. 420 days that this country has been enduring this debacle, this back and forth with the election results. Folks, I want to, as we unpack what has happened today, we are going to be joined by a young man from the office of the leader of the opposition, Mr. Elson Lowe, who is the advisor on youth and empowerment there. So we are going to be joined by him in a few, and he will help us to unpack what this ruling means and how do we take this moving forward. We heard that Senior Counsel Ford expressed that the appeal will be in as soon as possible. And I want to start the conversation about a number of other things, not only the petition, but what does this mean for us? What does this mean for the country? And we're going to be dealing with that in our story behind the story, because implications flowing from this decision and the fact that this idea of getting credible results from the election has been stalled, so to speak. We have to consider what that means. We have to consider what that means, folks. But before we get into discussing and we get to our guests, let me start with what I like to deem as bad numbers today, folks. We always, in the midst of what is happening in the country, we have to deal with COVID-19. And today we saw the 287th COVID-related death. A man, 46 years of age, died today, bringing the death toll to some 287. 287 persons have now succumbed to the COVID-19 pandemic in Guyana, folks. It has become, we have become sort of inert to this constant number, this number going up, and we hearing 1 and 2 and 3 a day and all manner of things. But I encourage us not to get numb to this, not to become inert to the level where you are numb to the idea that Guyanese, 287 Guyanese, from our very small population. I want you to consider that we have roughly between 700 and 800,000 persons in the country according to the last census. But that is where we are. This little country, think about 200, almost 300 persons that may be able to contribute to our country gone to this. Folks, we beg of you. We beg of you to do what you need to do, because COVID-19 is taking our people. We only need to look over to India to see what is happening. Our neighbors right in Brazil have been fighting a losing battle with COVID-19. And we see what the Indians are going through, what they're going through there in India. It is complete chaos. Complete chaos. And this is a 46-year-old man. This is not, by any stretch of the imagination, a old person. This is the man in the middle of his life, basically. He ain't even reached 50 yet. Folks, let us get serious about COVID-19. We can't implore you more. We cannot implore you more. All right. So now that we've done with the numbers, folks, let me move on to the big news of the day. Earlier today, we heard the ruling on Petition 88, which dealt with the legality or constitutionality of Order 60 of 2020, which of course was a recount order. And that petition was argued earlier in the month, and the Chief Justice handed down her ruling today. Of course, coming down on the side of the fraudulent PPP government, asserting, of course, that Petition 88 is dismissed, and essentially saying that Order 60 was not unconstitutional. essentially saying that Order 60 was not unconstitutional. This, of course, is a great disappointment to those persons who were expecting, of course, a different result today. A different result today. But we maintain, we continue to say that you know the court system has to work. The court system has to work. Of course, reactions from the leader of the opposition, reactions from the leader of the opposition. He was out there at the court and he was able to respond immediately. But I want to bring you, before we talk, we bring on our guests and we have some discussions on this and what it means moving forward. I want to bring you the reactions of the leader of the opposition. I'll read the statement because we having a little difficulty with the video for it, because he did come on our show earlier today and he read a statement. But I'm going to give you a summary of what was said by the leader of the opposition in his response to that the ruling by the Chief Justice. Let me see if I can bring that up for you, so you can get an idea of what the leader of the opposition said. Folks, it is disappointing. It is disappointing to many persons, and I see persons in the comments, you know, expressing their view. The leader of the opposition today, disappointed opposition leader, ridicules election petition. This is, of course, coming from news source, as atrocious. He deems it as atrocious. And let me go into some of what he said in his statement. Earlier today. Speaking, of course, about that ruling. As we wait, folks, for our guests, we encourage you to share the live stream. Share the live stream so that more persons come on and be a part of this discussion. Be a part of the discussion that we're having here. Important. We've had historic days leading all the way from March 2nd to now, where we've done many unprecedented things. Today was another one of those historic days. But we are going to read for you now the statement by the leader of the opposition, right? And give you an idea, right, of what he said. Let me just pull that up. Give me 1 second, folks. Bear with me here. We don't have our usual operator today, so I am having to do a lot of it on my own. But I'm going to get it for you, right? The leader of the opposition said, he said, "My fellow Guyanese, today the Chief Justice has ruled against our petition number 88 of 2020. Today, democracy was stabbed in the heart, and this fair land of Guyana of ours. We must not, sorry, I'll repeat that. We must now lodge an appeal against this atrocious," and this is where he describes it as atrocious, decision of the High Court. "Many of you previously expressed doubt and concern that the court will rule in our favor. Given the pattern of its ruling in election cases recently, we continue to advise that the judicial system will rule in accordance with the law. I have myself urged that if we do not have a court whose decisions are sound in law, fair in its application of justice, and perceived as impartial by the society, that crucial element that holds us together as a nation, we will lose its credibility, or it will lose its credibility," right? Today, like you, I am disappointed. This is the leader of the opposition. I am disappointed and feel let down by our judiciary, but I remain fortified that our hierarchy of the courts will correct this clear injustice which has been wrought on our Guyanese people. This is a clear attempt to protect the installed PPP regime, all right, from being removed from government where they have no right being. That is from the leader of the opposition, who expressed disappointment and dismay and called it atrocious. Folks, um, you know, let us know in the comment section how you feel about what happened today. How you feel about what happened today, right? Joining us now to help me unpack some of what went down today is Mr. Elson Lowe. Um, I will allow Elson to introduce himself and give us his portfolio before we start the discussion. But I'm happy to have this young man join us today. Elson, a good evening to you.
Hi, Randolph. How is it going?
It is going good considering the circumstances,
Considering
considering,
the circumstances.
yes, considering that the petition did not come down in our favor. But so before we continue, give us our audience, my audience specifically, I don't think you've ever been on this
Sure.
show before, an idea of who you are.
Yes, so I am the economic as well as the youth policy advisor to the leader of the opposition. I
Yes.
previously worked at the State Asset Recovery Agency before that agency was disbanded. And before that, I worked at Goldman Sachs and Co. in the US. I also
Oh,
have a little bit of a legal and investigatory background. I've been trained in anti-money laundering and anti-corruption.
right. Anti-corruption, well, we definitely need you with this PPP government, if I might say so. Elson, your general takeaway from what occurred today, of course, we're talking the elections petition.
Sure.
Um, your general takeaway before we dig down into a lot of the details. What are your immediate takeaways?
Well, Randy, I'd say that I think it's important to ask ourselves some big questions because I think that what's been happening is increasingly Guyanese have to ask themselves some big questions about the judicial system and how that system functions. I'll say one thing. I find it to be interesting that the previous Chief Justice Ian Chang was not confirmed, nor is the current Chief Justice. Would you agree with me, Randy, that it is better to have Chief Justices who are confirmed in their posts, and that we should, as a country, not be having a repeat situation where we have Chief Justices who are not confirmed?
Come back in here. I think that is extremely important because what it does, it sort of hangs uh, a cloud over your head, you know, and and just speaking generally here, if I am not confirmed in a position and I want to be confirmed in that position, one would think that I am being put in a situation where I may want to do something to ensure my
Well, let
confirmation.
me let me be more specific. The
Mhm.
From a political science perspective, from the ground up, the
Mhm.
reason that you want to have a judiciary that where everyone is confirmed and where politicians cannot remove or appoint judicial officials easily is to ensure that they're insulated, right? It
Yeah,
is to ensure that that branch of government is insulated from the other branches of government. So I'll
yeah,
start with that, just to throw it out there as something that I think every reasonable citizen would say that
yeah.
that is a good thing.
Mhm.
Another thing I would say is, I think that every reasonable citizen would say that justice should not have anything to do with who is in government or who is likely to be in government. It should
Yes,
stand on its own,
yeah,
right?
definitely. Go ahead.
Good. So what I would say is, when we look at decisions, we want to make sure that as much as possible, the public has confidence that justice is being done and that it is not influenced in any way. I think that's something general that we want. And the principle within the broader legal fraternity is that it is not just that justice be done, but that justice be seen to be done, because we want to ensure that the public has confidence in the judicial system. And
Yes.
I was riding in a taxi today, and a taxi driver expressed that he didn't have confidence in the judicial system. And I was concerned by that. I think you too would be concerned to hear that a citizen doesn't have confidence in our judicial system.
Yeah. I think that's
Yeah,
an important point you make, Elson, because when we were on today, Sheridan and I, we were speaking about the need for the public to have confidence in the court, and because it's such an important part of our social
yeah,
and political structure, and
yeah.
you don't want a situation where that confidence is eroded, because at the end of the day, everyone um, right, goes to the court to beg relief for some issue. Opposition, government, ordinary citizens, we all want to ensure
Yeah,
that this apparatus works as it should. So
as it should, as it should. And
yeah,
I'll give you another nugget to chew on here. One of the things that I like about the confirmation process that you see in the States, I have a background in the States, so I'm familiar with
yeah,
some of these things, is that before judges are confirmed to the Supreme Court, etc., they have to go through a round of questioning. You see, they have to go through close examination on why they ruled X, Y, and Z on X, Y, and Z, and what were their thoughts. And
mhm,
of course, you know that there's another petition that Justice George would have dismissed, which
yeah,
in my view, was the stronger petition and which touched on some very serious issues. Of course, that petition was dismissed on what some would say is a technicality, right? And so, a question that I would love to ask in a confirmation process is, why did the learned justice think that the interests of justice were better served by dismissing a petition which looked in close detail at the quality and the nature of our electoral system and its flaws? Why was it okay to dismiss something like that on the basis of a very small technicality? Some would say even a spelling error, or not a spelling error, but a mistype. So that was a petition which I think spoke deeply to the nature of our democracy and to progress in our democracy. So for it to be dismissed on such light grounds, I would love to ask her why it is that she thought that something like that was appropriate, and maybe she didn't think that justice was the most important criteria there. It could be, but these are the types of questions that it'd be good to get a chance to ask the learned justice closely about. Because
yeah,
there are many people that have said to me since that petition was dismissed, look, man, I'm not voting anymore. It's no use if there's going to be fraud here, fraud there. And I want to throw out to your viewers another thing, because I think that sometimes it's important to look at this thing, not just from a coalition standpoint, but from a Guyanese standpoint. Do you think that it is better that we're able to closely examine our electoral system for allegations of fraud and determine whether or not these things are true? Or do you think that it's better for us to just dismiss cases on a technicality?
yeah. And as you brought that up,
Yeah,
I want to let us dig a little deeper into this, dismissing not today's dismissal, but the throwing out of Petition 99, which dealt with the meat of what came out of the recount, the mountain of fraud that was found. And you would want to think, because the learned Chief Justice on many occasions would allude to the fact that, look, these are matters of national importance, right?
national
These are
importance.
matters of national importance. Now, Guyana had an opportunity to do something unprecedented, to audit the boxes, go in, count every ballot, and what they found was unbelievable. It was, it was, for want of a better word, fraud. And so to think that you want to improve, as they say, the situation in Guyana, and because these matters are nationally important, to lean on such a frivolous technicality to throw out something so weighty, it was very surprising. It was very surprising, as I shared with Chair Duncan.
It's very
Um,
surprising.
some legal minds have also posited that the court has remedy for situations like that. So why would you not call
Yeah,
on those remedies in such a heavy, heavy case, as in
yeah.
showing
And
Guyanese
and
the
hey,
fraud? Go ahead.
perhaps perhaps the learned justice was perfectly correct in her adjudication. All I'm saying is it would be great for us to have an opportunity to sit her down and ask her, why didn't you allow the reliance upon these legal remedies given the gravity of the petition? Is there a specific reason? Can you clarify what that reason could possibly be? We also heard in during the election, during the election period, we heard, go to a petition, file a petition. That's the way to resolve it. So of course there was tremendous focus upon these petitions. So for them to be dismissed on the basis of something that some would say is frivolous, I think again it'd be great to ask why. So in a confirmation hearing, if ever there were to be a confirmation hearing, I think that these would be interesting questions for the learned justice to face.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that I think is important for Guyanese to recognize is It may not even be that that petition would have worked out in the favor of the coalition. However, it is in the interest of Guyana more broadly. It is in the interest even of the small parties to have our election system thoroughly investigated. It is not a coalition says this, PUP says that situation. It is what is best for all Guyanese. And so I think that that is something that we need to sit back and reflect on and consider whether our process going forward in our judicial system going forward needs certain reforms and needs certain adjustments. Because obviously we don't want citizens to not have confidence in what they are seeing. Now that is one element of this. I do think that there are other things that you see from the time with Justice George, where, I would like to ask again, in the context of a confirmation hearing, why it is that you took this action that you took. Obviously, I would have spent some time at the State Asset Recovery Agency, and one of the things that has been publicly documented is that there was a challenge to the State Asset Recovery Agency's Act, the SARA Act. That's a challenge that was put forward by Mr. Gaskin. Now, Mr. Gaskin raised some concerns regarding that challenge because this is way back in 2017. He was a bit concerned that the challenge had not been heard. Some time had elapsed. Arguments were in, and yet this challenge was not being heard. Of course, this is something that was before the learned Chief Justice. And I have here an article, actually. Gaskin questions delay in ruling of challenge of SARA Act. This is an article from 2018. Now, if you have a case before you, and you don't rule on it for a prolonged period of time, we're talking about 2021 now, aren't we? Something that
Yeah.
was filed, I believe, in 2017. That's 4 years. Very interesting that in a case which is of such gravity, there would be no ruling. But further, what is not well understood is that one of the main barriers to SARA reclaiming the assets of those individuals, many of whom are within the PUP, who lived in Prouderville too, is that the act was being challenged. So your act is being challenged until that challenge is resolved. You cannot reclaim these assets that there's an allegation of corruption with. And of course, we know that it has been reported in the media that some people did indeed settle with the agency. So as far as I can tell, people don't settle where they think that they have a good case, right? They think that
Exactly.
maybe there's a reason that or where the case is reasonable, so they would settle. That I think anybody would say is a reasonable position. Now, that's one arm of it. But the other arm is why, for multiple years, did the learned justice not rule despite all of the arguments being in? Why do we have someone who is not a friend of the coalition, Gaskin, he talks up and down, not a friend, but him also complaining that the learned justice has not ruled on this law? And of course, the consequence of that is that uh, is that everyone in Prouderville too, essentially, was able to keep their house, keep their property, sleep well at night, all is well. I would never say that there are questions of corruption. I would never say that there are questions of bias. What I would instead say is that I would really appreciate an opportunity to sit down and ask the learned justice why it is that she did not rule on something that had such a huge impact on the future of Guyana. If you look at our neighbors, Brazil, I think four of the last four Brazilian presidents have been jailed or locked up, or their corruption system, anti-corruption system is very robust, you know. And so I would like to think that we would want to do as well as our neighbors and have a system of justice in which whether or not people are in positions of high influence, those people are dealt with fairly, and so there may be legitimate and proper reasons for not ruling on a legislative item that is of high importance and concerns former presidents and concerns currently now presidents and concerns almost every top official within the PVP. There may be other things that were more priority, more important to the future of the nation. But I would just love the opportunity to find out what those things were, why it is that the learned justice didn't think that it was really important to rule on for several years, to rule
Yeah.
on an important act like that. And of course, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars of property. We're talking about assets that belong to each and every Guyanese. We're talking about huge allegations of corruption as it regards Prouderville too. And of course,
Yeah.
Sarah was looking at many other cases. So again, it is a question of what else was there that was more important, more priority, because it's a possibility that there's some more priority, something that's more priority than a case or cases that concern the highest officials in the land, the deepest questions of justice, of right and wrong, of fairness, of all of us citizens being under the same law. What was the reason that the Learn Just decided that wasn't, something that she wanted to look at for, a 4 year period, you know,
4 years. Yeah, yeah.
four
I
years.
think you raise an interesting point there, Elson, and the ability to question judges is something, as you said, we may want to think about as reform, so that you have an idea. And this it offers some insight into the thinking behind a lot of these decisions, and you get a sense of the type of ruling that would probably come down from them. As we
Absolutely,
go ahead.
absolutely.
Yeah,
I would also say that, I think you would agree with me that if a judge knows that in future, for them to get a higher office, they would have to face questioning about their decisions before they can be appointed. Close questioning. I think
yeah,
you would agree with me that that would prompt that judge to, think carefully about the case, to really reflect. I think that's
yeah,
a reasonable statement to make. I would
yeah,
also
definitely.
say this. Sometimes judges will, give quotes or say things, or, and I can paraphrase, out in court that sometimes, you think to yourself, man, I would love to interrogate that. One of the things that is interesting is that in some of in one of the cases, of course, this is all public, this is all out in the court. One of the things that the Learned Justice said, regarding these cases with hundreds of millions of dollars involved, where people might have paid hundreds of millions of dollars below the value of the property. They paid substantially less than the public was actually owed regarding these properties. One of the things the learned judge would have said is, what's wrong with a good deal?
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting.
Very interesting. I can understand the learned judge has her opinion. She's moving from her legal background. But again, I think that many Guyanese would love to ask the learned judge, what exactly did you mean when you said, what's wrong with a good deal?
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I'm happy that you brought that up, folks. If you're now joining us, we're in conversation with Ms. Elson No, who is the Youth and Economic Advisor to the Leader of the Opposition, former Goldman Sachs employee, and of course, work at the State Asset Recovery here in Guyana, corruption, economic and corruption expert. So we're having some conversation about what is happening, or the fallout of the decision today. But I want to take you to Petition 99, Elson. Let's
Yeah,
talk Petition 99. Because I firmly believe that this was the stronger of the two petitions. And I believe
I
this is
agree.
why so much effort was
Yeah.
put into getting or not allowing this to be heard in court. Your thoughts?
Yes, I agree that it was the stronger of the two petitions, in my opinion. What I liked is that it provided an opportunity for us to.
Ooh, shoots. Oh boy, sorry. Folks, we have a bit of issue. We will bring back Mr. Elson. Give us a second. Sorry about that. Sorry about that, Elson. My again, the operation
No
here
problem
is,
at all. No
yeah. But
problem
go
at
ahead.
all.
We're talking there about
Yes,
the
about petition 99. We're
petition
talking about that
99.
petition and examining the electoral system closely. Now, as
Yes.
I mentioned, there are people who would have said, I'm not voting again if my vote is going to be fraudulent, if it's not gonna count, if in the end, it's not gonna pan out, and whoever is really rightfully in office is not gonna be rightfully. I wouldn't vote. People say things like that, and that I think everyone would agree is not good for our democracy, is not good for our future. We don't want citizens to be discouraged from participating. I think everyone would agree with that. Now, what I think that that petition provided is an opportunity to look closely at the electoral system so as to restore confidence, so as to enable reforms, so as to allow us to adjust and to build on our current electoral system. Because we're going to have this electoral system for some time going forward, and we want to ensure that it is as fair and just, as credible, as reasonable as it can be. And so when such grave concerns are raised, we need to be able to address those concerns. And so, again, I say the Learned Justice would have had her reason for dismissing it. I just would love the opportunity to ask her, what her perspective is on whether justice is better served in dismissing a petition on the basis of the technicality, which was very small in nature, or at least some would say is very small in nature, versus allowing Guyanese to really look closely at their democratic system so that they can move it forward. If perhaps she thinks that justice was better served, she can have that opinion. But it would be great to ask her why she thinks that, what her reasoning is, how she can justify a decision on that basis. That would be a great opportunity. And I hope that Learn Justice is willing to provide detailed reasons as to why it is. Because we don't want citizens, to, whether or not they should be, to be discouraged from participating. We don't want that. We want citizens to have the utmost confidence in the integrity of our system. We want citizens to have the utmost confidence that every vote will count, and that ultimately the person that really is the winner will be the winner. And I think that many people would agree that that petition would have gone a long way towards ensuring that there was confidence. Now we're looking at a second petition. We're looking at a second petition that was dismissed. And one of the things that I hope doesn't happen is that citizens see, this petition's dismissed, that petition's dismissed. Man, the coalition never had a case. Nothing they were saying ever, we have not had a chance to examine closely the things that were alleged. What we have had is these two petitions dismissed. I hope that citizens aren't going to take from this, oh, there was never a case. We never had a chance to look. Citizens, I would instead hope, should ask themselves a deep question. Why is it that we never had a chance to look at these things? I may have a perspective, other people may have a perspective, but I want each and every one of you to ask yourself, why is it that we never had a chance to look closely at our electoral system in a time of great controversy and where we now have oil windfalls coming that can shake up and change the whole future of the country? You may have a different perspective than me, but I think that we as citizens, it is reasonable to say, should be asking questions. We should be asking questions. When we see different types of decisions, some that we like, some that we don't like, we should be asking questions. And maybe that forum will come up where the Learn Justice will be happy to answer some questions, whether or not that interrogation is close and specific.
I want to get your views on a particular issue. There have been many in the social circles, social media, who are pushing this constant drumbeats of SOPs, SOPs. I don't know if those persons were listening to the ruling today when the Chief Justice articulated the point that there was no dependence on the 10 declarations that were there previously. And everything has now, or that has been overtaken by the results coming out of the recount. Again, she upheld that the 60 recount order was not unconstitutional, it was constitutional, and basically took us away from any declaration. So the SOPs, which was the basis for the 10 declarations, would have been overtaken. These are the words of the Chief Justice today. Those are overtaken by they say now. So I mean, I am hoping that persons have now dispelled and understand clearly that the PPP is sitting in the seat of government, not on statements of polls, but statements of recount. And that was, of course, what is being challenged in the court, whether or not the recount should have happened. That was petition 88. I'm hoping, I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Well, I would say the thrust of petition 88, as I gather it,
Mm.
is one of the process. Is this the right process? Is this a lawful process, etc. And the Chief Justice would have ruled accordingly,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And so she's indicated that she thinks that this process was appropriate and so on and so forth, despite the fact that it may have deviated from previous process.
Yeah.
However, one thing that I would love to point out is that in dismissing 99, we had a process, we're following the process. There's a slight deviation, but it seems that that slight deviation was held to be just as important as a massive deviation. And so in one petition, it seems that you can deviate all you want, but you make the slightest deviation in another petition and it's dismissed. So again, I'd love the opportunity to ask, why would you say that one deviation is more important than another deviation?
Mhm.
Can you indicate what your reasoning is? Because I don't understand how a ruling can be look one way in one petition, look another way in the other petition. We're holding one thing to a very high, a very stringent standard, and another
Yes.
thing not to the same stringent standard. One of the arguments is if Order 60 is legal and to be followed, then all of Order 60 is legal and to be followed. That's the standard that we're holding to. That's what some people are arguing.
Yeah.
Now, what I'd say is, similarly, if the petition, the 99, if we're going to hold things to such a loose standard, where not everything needs to be followed, why is it that everything had to be followed with that petition? Why wasn't there any wiggle room? There's wiggle room in one area, but not wiggle room in another area. Now, I am not making any allegation about bias or corruption or anything like that. All I'm saying is that I think citizens have a right, and it is reasonable for us to want to ask questions both of the system and of the justice involved. Can you explain? Can you help us to understand your reasoning? Can you show us why one thing is more important than another? And
Mhm.
so, until we get those questions answered, I am afraid that maybe there'll be a little bit of question in the public, which is unfortunate. But again, the best that we can do is to try to interrogate.
Yeah. Before I let you go, Elson, the question of petition 99. Uh, I hold that there would it would be hard for a court to listen to all of those pieces of evidence of irregularities coming out of the recount and still maintain that the elections were credible. Do you believe that that is so?
I completely agree in that respect. I think that one of the things that I emphasize is that the institutions, the rule of law in Guyana is very weak. And so when you see even in your electoral process a host of allegations, several of which are deeply concerning and have considerable evidence that behind them, so we would like to look at them. I think that that raises real questions about the quality of rule of law in the country. And again, I'm not saying from a coalition perspective, as much as it may seem self-serving, it may seem that it serves the coalition to attack and to say, oh, this petition shows you're right. I think it serves the interests of Guyana to look at our institutions, to look at our democratic process, and to see where there are problems and where there are things that are advantageous and how we can build going forward. And I think that that is a very reasonable position to take. So, unfortunately, we haven't had that chance due to that ruling. As I've mentioned, I would love to hear the justifications and regarding some of these principles of justice. Because of course, one must hold at the back of one's mind whether it serves the interest of justice to have something be dismissed on a technicality versus looking at a democratic process which is very controversial and which has inspired, it would appear to be, some degree of a lack of confidence by many citizens. So listen, I have a perspective. I'm sure that other people have different perspectives to mine. But what I think we can all agree on is that it would be great for us to be able to engage more closely, to question closely these decisions and judges as to what the reasoning was. And what we take away from that, we take away from it. But at the same time, we don't want a judicial system where there's considerable discontent.
Right. Folks, if you're now joining us, we're having in conversation with Mr. Elson Lowe, who is the advisor on youth and economics and leader of the opposition. Quite an interesting discussion. I'm following the comments here, Elson, and persons are engaged in what is happening. If I can take some of the questions they're asking here, one person has asked, so what is the way forward? We know that the leader of the opposition has expressed this desire to appeal, and immediately the senior counsel Ford would have said the same. Um, as a Guyanese, as an onlooker, not a person involved directly with the case, what would you hope to see happen as we move forward, given what happened today? And taking into account, as you said, I want to just add this little caveat that we have not had an opportunity yet to hear the substance of Petition 99, which deals with all of the things that came out of that recount. Moving
Well,
forward.
well, I start by saying this. We did not have an opportunity to hear the substance of much of the cases. We did not have an opportunity to get judgments regarding the cases with Praderville 2. We
Mhm.
are not getting an opportunity to have a close examination, judgments on the incidents regarding the election. And there are many instances where our system does not seem to be providing us with the answers that many citizens would like. I
Yeah.
want to see a better system than that. That's the first thing. The second thing I would say is that we have one system that we're working with right now. We can't change the system overnight. So I would like to see going forward some judgments on these petitions that allow us to have confidence or at least to feel that we've given everything that should be looked at a fair hearing. I would love to see going forward some judgments that detail that because I think that that is important for our democracy, for our system of government, for the confidence in the judiciary. I think that these are important things. So that is what I would like to see going forward, and I'm looking to see how the judicial system deals with these issues. You know, but again, I think that what we as Guyanese should take away from the many cases that we've observed over the past few years is, you know, we can look at this judicial system and see how we can improve it. Because one of the things, and I'll stress this again, that I just love about the US system when it comes to the appointment of judges is the ability to ask questions about judges' reasoning rather than just having judgments sit there and we have to accept what we have to accept. It would be nice for us to be able to really interrogate some of these things. And through interrogation, maybe we'll be all be edified and maybe we'll have even more questions about what is really going on. So that is an opportunity that I would love to see going forward. I don't know that we'll have that opportunity, but at least with the judicial system we have right now, I would hope that in the cases, in the appeals, etc., going forward, whatever can be done to instill further confidence in the judicial system is done because that helps no one when we have a lack of confidence in the judicial system.
Yeah. Mr. Elson Low, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. We
Thank
know
you.
just to tell the people that the appeal to petition 99 will be heard on June the 14th, I believe. And so we'll be keeping a keen eye on that. Of course, considering all the things that you have said with us, very interesting conversation this afternoon. I thank you for dropping by um, to be a part of this discussion as we try and unpack what has played out today. Elson, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right. Folks, we were chatting there with Mr. Elson Lowe, who is the advisor on youth and economics at the Office of the Leader of the Opposition. Of course, a former Goldman Sachs worker, and of course, employee, and of course, he was a part of the state asset recovery, as he expressed to us, has some background in law and corruption and economic investigations. So, thank you very much, Elson. There, for those persons who are now joining us, we are going full speed ahead in unpacking a number of the issues. We had a very lengthy discussion there on the elections petition. Of course, that is the big news today. Elections petition 88 being dismissed by the Chief Justice. She ruled that Order 60 Order 60 of 2020 was not unconstitutional. And many persons, of course, sharing their opinions on this. Uh, you know, and one question that comes up very often is if Order 60 was, as deemed constitutional, and if it's legal and it's legit, then it should be followed we should have followed by the letter to the T. We should have done everything that Order 60 stipulated, right? Part of the argument is that Order 60, GCOM deviated from what Order 60 set out to do, and that was to come to a credible vote count. And by all accounts, credibility was lacking as it relates to the vote count, given all of the irregularities that were uncovered. But we are going to move forward. We are going to move ahead. We're going to be listening to that petition appeal to 99, which should be on the 14th of June. Folks, let us continue down the road of the news cycle today. We saw a number of other things happening. We have been talking to you about this ongoing oil scandal before I get to my story behind the story today. But we have brought to your attention the continued oil scandal there at Guy Oil and its implications for GPL. Right. Its implications for GPL and a number of other agencies. Folks, this is very serious. So yesterday we saw a report coming out from GRA where they said they seized a loaded oil tanker. The tanker which was at the center of the Guy Oil fuel purchase scandal. Right, and the importer released some of the records and conversations between him and Guy Oil officials. Of course, on our special on Saturday, we spoke about that oil scandal in some details. These are new developments. These are new developments in that now we are hearing that the oil tanker, which was the center of the confusion, in those recordings, we heard Guy Oil official saying to Mr. Aaron, you have to promise us that you can deliver on this. And they went into some detail about the quality and the amount and where they're going to ship it from. It can come from Panama. A whole heap of details in that meeting, a 90-minute recording about the oil that was supposed to be imported. Now we see the Ghana Revenue Authority seizing that vessel. So this is new development in this continuing oil saga. Including involving Guy Oil, and of course has implications for GPL because it was said in the meeting that this shipment is supposed to be for GPL. And you heard in a subsequent recording that somebody revealing some information that GPL would have used their buffer of oil, so we're going to go through with this deal. But this story seems to have so many layers, so many departments and compartments and crevices that we are crawling in. It's one rabbit hole after another when it comes to this story. And it speaks to the level of corruption that we are seeing in our country under this fraudulent administration, who would have put these people in place who are known to the court system. These are people who are known to the court system and known to the corruption game. Right? And then added to that, in addition to that, as the story, we add another layer to this oil scandal story. We saw recently that the importer, Mr. Aaron, would have been arrested. Folks, you can't make this thing up. You can't make these things up. We saw Mr. Aaron being arrested on suspicion of cyber crime. Very, very interesting. Now, where this is coming from, I am assuming here that it has to do with those recordings that Mr. Aaron revealed of his conversations between himself and Guy Oil official. This is the only thing that we can put this up to. But we saw, right. Let's play that for you so you can get an idea. Mr. Aaron would have been arrested. Folks, I'm telling you, you can't make up this story. You can't make up this story. Right? This was about 4 hours ago. Breaking news. The CEO of the company at the center of the Guy Oil import scandal arrested by CID accused of breaching Cybercrime Act. Now, it seems as though Mr. Aaron can't catch a break. That is what it seems. Guy Oil official allegedly came to him, requested that, look, I want you to bring in some fuel for us. And he alleges that this deal was a huge kickback deal. He alleges that this deal was a huge kickback deal where persons involved would have gotten a cut. This deal, of course, was worth some 3 million US, 600 million Guyana dollars. Right? 600 million Guyana dollars. But of course, he went through, he had conversations with I'm mixing up my G's here, Guy Oil, and he brought in this fuel. Eventually, this deal went through. Mr. Aaron, of course, has already done all he needed to do to bring the fuel to Guyana, and then this deal went sour. So now the vessel that was docked out there has now been seized by GRA. Seized by GRA. And then after that, to compound the issue, Mr. Aaron has now been arrested cybercrime for breaking the Cybercrime Act. This, of course, has to do with the release of those recordings. Right? Crime Chief Wendell Blanham has confirmed the arrest and told News Source that Mr. Aaron has been held in question in relation to an offense under the Cybercrime Act. So, Mr. Aaron, seems as though, they're going to go after you now. And this is quite sad. Of course, I'm not coming down on the side of anyone here on this issue. I'm just saying that Mr. Aaron felt that his only defense was to release these recordings because it seems as though there is a huge cover-up and persons are trying to cover their end. All of these guys in Guy Oil are now trying to cover their end. And because, of course, Mr. Aaron had nothing in writing, which is very interesting, he felt that his only way out was to reveal these recordings, which were very damaging and very damning. I must say, people are talking about kickbacks and people are talking about, keeping this quiet and you're going to get your money, all manner of things. So Mr. Aaron felt that, look, this is my only recourse to release these things. Now the police have arrested Mr. Aaron for breaking the Cybercrime Act. Now this is very interesting and this story just keeps ballooning, like an avalanche and snowballing. My question, of course, we see action being taken against Mr. Aaron. But I'm sure that the police and the persons in authority, they have evidence there of wrongdoings on the part of these Guy Oil officials. And I'm wondering whether these Guy Oil officials will face any sort of consequence for their part in this scandal. Folks, this whole situation just smells of rank, putrid fish. It's fishy. It is fishy. And we'll continue to cover this story as it unfolds. It is one, as people like to say, one soap opera after the other. But we'll continue to follow this. Right? But again, Mr. Aaron would have been arrested. Folks, Let me say this as I get to my story behind the story, and I'll deal with this very calmly today because I want you to have an idea and put all of what we've been seeing into context. Let's get to our story behind the story. Folks, let me say this. In light of the ruling we heard today by the Chief Justice on Elections Petition 88, in light of all of what we've been seeing in the media, very clearly outlining the corruption that is happening in Guyana, unprecedented. We know very well that the PPP is the most corrupt party in Guyana's history. But let me give you a little idea of what Guyana has endured for the last, how much? 260 something days. 267 days. Let me give you an idea. I will start with the most recent, the Guy Oil fuel supply racket, COVID cash grant racket, medical supply racket, housing scheme development racket, GWI racket, GPL fuel racket, regional tender board racket, medical supplies racket, road construction racket, Guy Suko racket, Bank of Guyana money printing racket, prisoners pay for release racket. We heard a recording of a prisoner who said he paid $1 million for his release. Gas to shore pipeline racket, land allocation racket, land for shore base racket. You would believe that the PPP is playing table tennis with all these rackets. You would believe they're playing lawn tennis or table tennis because it's a whole heap of rackets. Guyana has endured 267 days of massive corruption. This is what the PPP has engaged in. The economics of corruption. All of these rackets. They got some good table tennis and lawn tennis players and badminton players and squash players. Any sport that you gotta use a racket, the PPP very good at it because it's bare rackets. You have to win with them rackets. Believe the PPP could open up a sports store right now and just sell rackets. Let me go through them once again. Guy Oil fuel supply racket, COVID cash grant racket, medical supplies racket, housing scheme development racket, Guy War racket, GPL fuel racket, tender board racket, road construction racket, Guy Suko racket, Bank of Guyana money printing racket, prisoners paying for their release racket, gas to shore pipeline racket, land allocation racket, land to shore base racket. This is the PPP. As all of these things happening, we have people in our hospitals dying of COVID. As Guyanese die from COVID. The PPP seems more concerned with how much money they could grab and which corrupt official they could put where so that they can just rape the country. Rape the country. Rape the treasury. The GRA has seized this boat with fuel that the importers brought in. I wonder if the GRA is investigating Mr. Shyam Prasad, who revealed in his text messages between him and Mr. Aaron that he has 50 million US in his bank account. Well, I want to know what was the last couple jobs that Mr. Prasad used to do. I know he used to work with Guy Suko. I wonder whether or not there will be an investigation with this 50 million US. How would we treat you back? Come on, what you own, sir? Which business you own? You are listed as a privatization specialist. Folks, the story behind the story is that our country is in turmoil. Our country is in turmoil. The country is saddled with a corrupt, fraudulent administration that cares little for the average man. The average public servant, the average civil servant. We have the Minister of Public Service coming out and saying, listen, we fire people because we need to make the industry work properly and the sectors work properly. There's our justification for firing qualified people. I wonder how the EPA is working right now that you sent home the most qualified person to head it. I wonder how they are working right now. I wonder if they are working properly. And you send home cleaners and average people and nurses and the ambulance brigade and the young people who doing the little data management so that the industry could work properly. This evil and wicked administration sitting in the seat of power on fraudulent numbers and continues to take our country through turmoil. Folks, the story behind the story is that our country is in turmoil, and it's only a matter of time before this brewing volcano. There'll be another volcano, you know. St. Vincent and Nevensia, Mont Souffert, La Souffert. We get la corruption, la PPP, the oppressive regime of the PPP. It is only a matter of time before the lava chamber erupts. And I'm telling you, it's brewing in this country. It is brewing. The volcano of discontent and dissatisfaction and anger is brewing in Guyana. And it's only a matter of time before it erupts. Trust me on that. Folks, let us continue to work for national development. There is only so much we can say. There's only so much we can do. But I hope when people start to do, that this wicked and oppressive regime that is the PPP understands that they would have pushed Guyanese to this place. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your evening. Hope that you do the things you need to do to protect your friends and family from COVID-19. Let's continue to hold the line of battle. Day 267. Those are the words that I said on the 3rd of August when I came on to this show. The day after this administration, this fraudulent administration would have been installed, I came on, I said it's day 1 of the resistance. On day 267, let us continue to hold the line of battle. Let us do. My name is Randolph Critchlow. We thank you very much. And again, as I say, do continue to work together for national development. Good evening.